Hello, and welcome to Beyond Books, where we talk about books and always go beyond. It's Tag Tuesday, so you know what that means. Time for me to do a tag. This tag is called the Roadmap of Your Life, and I was tagged by Genre Books, Gavin at Genre Books, and it is a original tag by Tristan L. Spacebook. And it only has, interestingly, two prompts. So let's get started. I do have a co host today. Let's see if I can get her to go up on the bed. If I throw a treat, there she is. Oh, she didn't go up on the bed, she just grabbed the treat. That's Raina. She's the co host. Okay, so number one, what is a book that reminds you of or takes place in each place that you've lived? And this could mean the country, state, province, city, town, apartment, home, etc., etc. Just come up with a book that really resonates with you and the time you spent in each place where you had a mailing address. So I am from New England. Every once in a while, you still can hear it in my voice. I had a New England accent at one time. So the book for the area that I'm from that most closely correlates, in my opinion, is Moby Dick. um, and yeah, that's a book that, I read in high school. I think I've read it maybe once since. Of course, I've seen the movie. There's different movies now that are out that are based on that. And I don't have a copy of it right now, but one of the things that I do want to read that I have on my shelf is Ahab's Return, which I think is interesting. It's also called The Last Voyage, and this is by Jeffrey Ford, and it is about Captain Ahab's ghost coming back since his tangle with the whale, and kind of seeing a little bit more what our modern life is like. So that'll be interesting. Come on, Marina. Come on. So you can get a better look at her. I don't know. She's silly today. She really wants to go outside, and it's kind of hot. So, yeah, I'll walk her in a little bit. That'll help her out a little. Um, I also have lived in the West, Colorado and New Mexico, and I do enjoy reading books about the American West in general. Uh, Although those aren't necessarily westerns, even though I am reading a western right now. In fact, I'm about halfway through it. I don't have it here in this room with me, but it's the Sisters Brothers book by Patrick DeWitt, and I am enjoying it quite a bit so far. It's a different kind of a western, and it's good. So I'll talk about that more later in a subsequent video. But anyway, the books that I remember enjoying when I lived in the West around that time, that was the late 80s through the 90s, were the Edward Abbey books. He's an environmentalist, conservationist. He writes about nature, and his book, Desert Solitaire, is, a classic, well known book. That one was very good. I also read and very much enjoyed The Monkey Wrench Gang, which is about a group that goes around and kind of sabotages attempts to build and expand into environmentally sensitive areas. So they're called the Monkey Wrench Gang. In the early 2000s, we moved to Florida, and that's where we acquired Miss Raina there. And as far as Florida is concerned, it will forever be enshrined in the literary world for me by a writer called Tim Dorsey. All of his books are a series, basically, although they don't have to be read in serial order. I read them certainly way out of order. But they are about a man who is basically crazy. His friends are crazy. His name is Serge Storms. He's somewhat of a serial killer, really, and he kills people in some very inventive ways. It's obviously quite satirical. But in his books, you learn so much about Florida. You learn so much about the history of Florida and just these kind of like far out areas in Florida that you probably wouldn't even necessarily visit, but it's pretty fascinating to learn about them. So if you enjoy that kind of like dark humor, I think that his books would be something that you really like. I mean, there has to be 25 or so of these things. The Surge Storms series. So, yeah, they're good. And yeah, probably with Florida, it's all becoming pretty homogenous. It's all going to look the same quite soon. So, good to learn about maybe the way that it used to be. But now that I live in Virginia, there are lots of authors from here that either are from here or currently live here. In fact, many that I have read pretty widely. One would be Patricia Cornwell. She's lived in Richmond. Her book, her series of books, the K. Scarpetta series, which is about a medical examiner, actually started out in Richmond. And in the later volumes now, it's kind of interesting because Dr. Scarpetta has returned to Richmond. Um, so she's back here in the area. Uh, John Grisham also lives in Virginia, uh, even though I don't believe he's from here. But David Baldacci is another author that's written tons of books. I've read a few of his. I've read a lot of John Grisham's, but I think David Baldacci is not only from here and currently lives here, but I think he's always lived here as far as I know. Patricia Cornwell is kind of interesting. She actually lived in New Mexico, Florida, Virginia, and now Massachusetts. And the Kay Scarpetta books take place in Florida, Virginia, and Massachusetts as well. So, kind of interesting that she and I and her main character have shared, some of our places to live. I've read a few books since I've been here in Virginia by lesser known authors. Um, Two books that I have that I enjoyed are this anthology. It's of horror stories, Dark Corners of the Old Dominion. Pretty good, anthologies. I mean, some stories are really good, some, not as much. But one author that I read in there that I liked, and I got one of his books, is D. Alexander Ward, and the book is called Beneath Ash and Bone, and that is also horror stories, or a horror story, I guess I want to say. I also have read since I've been here. I started the series called the Sky series, or sometimes it's called the Jamestown series, by an author named Connie Lapallo, Lapallo. I read book one, which is called Dark Enough to See the Stars in a Jamestown Sky. These are books of historical fiction. There are two others in the series. It takes you through, starts I think in the 1500s, takes you through I believe maybe to the 1700s, and they are kind of written from the female's perspective. So what were the women doing when the men were off, fighting and hunting and gathering, etc., etc. What were the women doing? They had to survive, they had to eat, they had to clothe themselves, they had to defend themselves. So the stories are more along the lines of that. And yeah, I found the first one to be very good, so I'm sure that I'll be reading others. So, second prompt we're at now. It says, since a roadmap not only shows you where you've been, but also where you're going, what is a book that reminds you of or takes place in your next destination or a place you would like to live in? Well, I have no plans to move to a different destination, but as far as planning visits, it's a little difficult for me right now, but I may take a trip in 2024 to Kansas. That is where my sister lives. Of course, one of my favorite stories, The Wizard of Oz, takes place there in Kansas. Uh, this is a book that is meant to be decorated, and I've never gotten around to doing it yet, but I will. And when I do, I'm going to show it on my channel. But yeah, so The Wizard of Oz, of course, takes place in part in Kansas. And the other book that makes me think of Kansas is one I actually reread last year, but I've read it several times, is In Cold Blood, famous classic by Truman Capote. Uh, Beautifully written book, even though it's about a horrible crime. Also, my sister and I are planning a sister trip to Portland, Oregon, uh, probably in 2025. I've been there, but my sister hasn't. So prior to that, I'll probably read something, by authors from that area, um, or things about that area. So if you have any suggestions of something that I should read before going to Portland or Kansas, let me know in the comments below. We'll see what we can do. So that is the tag. It's Tuesday, June 18th, as you're watching this. And I will go for surgery on the 19th, which is Wednesday. So I won't be making any videos probably until the beginning of July. I think there will be about a good 2, maybe even 3 week period where I won't be on camera. But what I've done is there are 2 reviews that are of books that I read and ranked for the BookTube prize, and those are Burnham Wood and Wellness. They are 2 that are still in the running right now for the BookTube prize. So my reviews of those will post in the 2 week interim where, like I say, I'll be recovering from surgery and not be on camera. So, and for those of you who don't know about my situation, I do have breast cancer. And the one I have is called invasive lobular carcinoma. And it's a stage 1. It's very, very treatable. And I'm going to be fine eventually. We'll get there. I've had one surgery where they did try to remove all of the cancerous area. However, I had 2 positive margins on the biopsy of the tumor. So the good news, though, from that biopsy is that my lymph nodes are clear. So solid stage 1 still, but I do need to go back to surgery. That is the drawback. This time surgery is going to be much more extensive, but they'll get it all this time, and I can move on. So any other treatment is still kind of up in the air because I need to get myself out of this surgical phase, and then they'll look at all of the information and decide what else I need to keep the cancer from ever coming back. So I'm going to link 2 videos of mine where I talk a little more extensively about my experience with cancer, when I was diagnosed, a type of cancer, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you're interested, please feel free to take a look. Very open to talking about it. So as always, I so appreciate all of you. Your prayers, your good vibes are still needed and are very welcome. Thank you to all who have watched, subscribed, and reached out to me. I will see you soon. Thanks for watching.